Hi everyone, the topic of this video is a little bit strange maybe, but I think it should be interesting. I'm creating it because there's been a lot of heat lately around the fact that Elementor generates a bunch of unnecessary HTML code and which in turn affects the page load time, even the ranking. In that name, I guess Elementor team decided to feature the optimized DOM output and improved asset loading. I'll get back to the optimized DOM output a little bit later after I briefly explain what you're looking at on screen right now and what my intention is. So here I got 6 different sections that represent my imaginary homepage. Each section represents one typical example of non-optimal usage of columns, intersections, and widgets. I gather these from the people I work with or I use them by myself, not being aware of the possible mistake that I make. The entire imaginary homepage layout is made with Elementor. There are no third-party plugins or add-ons involved, not even the Elementor PRO. And my goal is to optimize that layout and save between 15 and 20% on the final size of the HTML. How I'm going to do that? Well, I'm going to reduce the number of columns wherever I can. I'm going to merge widgets if possible, and I'm going to use Steroids for Elementor add-on to make widgets behave like columns. More precisely, I'm going to need the Widget Stalker extension, which is the latest addition to Steroids for Elementor. Okay, the very first step is to check the initial size of the HTML of my imaginary homepage. I'm going to use developer tools of my browser, which is by the way Firefox, and under the network settings, I'll check the initial size of the HTML. This is not the document size, which includes media, CSS, and JavaScript, it's the size of the HTML only. And you can clearly tell that my page is currently 71.19 kilobyte heavy. First, I'll go to the Elementor settings and under the experiment tab, I'll enable the optimized DOM output. It is still in beta phase, but according to the documentation, the optimized DOM output experiment aims to improve performance by increasing the number of wrapper elements present in the HTML that is generated by Elementor. Let's save changes and let's see what our small-scale model of the imaginary homepage says about that. So I'll just jump from the WordPress admin to my homepage, the front end, and I'm going to refresh the page in order to pick up a new measurement. Okay, now you can clearly tell that our HTML got slimmer, and instead of 71.19, it's 68.98 kilobyte. We saved like 2.21 kilobyte, which is not that promising. However, it's all about the reduction of wrapper elements. Let's now get back to Elementor and let's do the further reduction. My plan is to revise each section and optimize the layout by trying to reduce the number of wrapper elements manually. I'm about to rationalize the usage of widgets and columns, and I'm going to prove that the optimized DOM output won't save you from the excessive HTML. You are the only one who can really do something about it. At the end, we'll use developer tools and measure the weight of our imaginary homepage once again. As simple as that. Alright, section number 1. The situation is pretty much obvious. We have a section with 2 columns, where the second column is being used like a right-hand side margin, which is very wrong. The second column is simply not needed, so I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to add 40% margin to the right-hand side of the first column. Section number 2. Well, here we have a section with 2 columns and 4 widgets in total, which in the end could easily become a section with only 1 column and 2 widgets. So I'll duplicate this section because I still have to be able to copy the content from somewhere. And I'll actually start from scratch because I have to deploy a different widget anyway. Basically, you can always use the image box widget if you need the title with the tagline. All you gotta do is to remove the image. Likewise, you can use the same widget if you want to add the image and the text below the image. And in that case, you only have to leave the title input field blank. That's why I made 2 copies of the image box widget. The first one is going to replace the title with tagline, and the second one replaces the image and text. I mentioned at the beginning that I'm planning to merge some widgets, so it's not literal as you can see, it's rather practical. By doing that, I'm going to have 2 widgets in total instead of 4, which sounds like a decent reduction, right? HTML wise, you gotta know that each and every Elementor widget has at least 2 wrapper elements. So now instead of 8 wrapper elements, I'll end up having only 2. That's a lot, right? It takes a little bit of time to replicate the content entirely here, and I want to keep everything as is design-wise. But at the end, it's gonna be 90% different construction-wise, so to speak. When speaking of alignment of my two widgets, they actually don't need more than one column to become alignable side by side. And that's the most frequent abuse of columns, because people tend to create columns whenever they need to line up widgets horizontally, which is actually very wrong. There are two possible solutions to the problem. The first one is to use Elementor's inline positioning, or better say the custom width, which can be found under the Advanced tab positioning panel. However, I'll rather go for the Widget Stalker extension that allows more flexibility and alignment options. Widget Stalker is one of the extensions of Steroids for Elementor add-on. It must be enabled per widget, as you can see. So here I'm going to use the flex sizing method for both of my image box widgets, where the flex value must be 1. This is identical to the usage of unit sizing method, where both of them should be 50% wide for the same effect. At the end, I just have to add 32 pixels of padding to the left and the right hand side of the widget itself. You can clearly tell that there is no visual difference between the old and the new setup of my section number 2, except the fact that I saved some HTML. And now I just have to remove the original section. Section number 3. Okay, what I see here is way too many sections and columns and widgets. If I evaluate all that perfectly ordered mess, I can tell that I'm dealing with the 2 top columns, 4 inner sections, 4 inner columns, and 8 widgets. I believe that the extra intersection widget below the image was meant to provide that space or the padding around the text. Anyhow, that case scenario is almost identical to the previous one. All I'm gonna need here are the 2 top columns, 2 image box widgets, and 2 heading widgets. As you can see, there's a heading widget at the bottom too, and most likely it represents some kind of a text button. So I'll simply merge 3 widgets into one single image box widget. I wish that the button element is also a part of the image box, because in that case I would be able to include the text button too. But anyway, let me just speed all up a little bit. I don't want to waste too much time on duplicating content across sections. I just have to transfer text and images and use identical HTML title tags, handle the spacing between elements, etc, etc. I believe everyone knows how to do that. When it comes to the padding or the space around the text, and for which I said to be the cause of having the extra intersection widget, Steroids for Elementor bring another little helper, in the form of the extension, of course. And that little helper is named Inbox. I know it's an extremely stupid name, but I obviously couldn't come up with anything better in that moment. No matter what, it allows me to set up the padding around the content, and that's the only thing that counts right now. If you wonder, is there a way to eliminate the second top column completely and then use Widget Stalker to align my widgets side by side? Well, there is, because the Widget Stalker extension literally allows you to arrange widgets in grid. However, due to the fact that content is vertically aligned to the bottom, it's much more safe to keep the second column. We already saved a lot here, so let's enjoy a little bit of luxury. Section number 4. Well, it looks like it's already halfway there, because I can tell that all I gotta do here is to eliminate the intersection with 3 columns and deploy the Widget Stalker extension to simply bring these 3 images to the same row, to line them up. Which implies that the intersection widget is not necessary at all. So we're gonna save intersection with 3 columns here. This time, the sizing method is going to be units, and every image widget is going to be 33.33% wide, aka 1/3 of the available horizontal space. I could also use flex sizing method, like I already have 2 sections above, but I want to show you that the final result doesn't make any difference. Alrighty, another section has been blessed by the whole reduction. Let's move to the next one. Section number 5. Well, this is obviously another overloaded section with 4 intersections, 7 columns, and 7 widgets in total. Well, for that kind of situation, I cannot completely blame the author of this layout. As you already know, in Elementor it's not possible to have the intersection columns arranged like 2x2 grid. You can only keep 4 columns in one single row. I'm talking about how columns work for the desktop devices. However, columns may collapse in responsive mode normally, which is not quite normal because it turns out that the desktop is an exception of the system that otherwise should be consistent. So once again, I'm going to merge 2 widgets from the topmost intersection into one single image box, without the image of course, and I'll simply take it out by leaving the intersection completely unused. It might be a little tricky to drag and drop widget between 2 intersections, obviously because Elementor thinks that I'm trying to drop the widget inside the intersection. So I have to do something else to bring it to the right position. Okay, there are also 5 icon box widgets below the initial text, each of which belongs to one intersection column. That kind of a layout can completely be managed by the Widget Stalker extension, which means that I don't need a single intersection widget or the column at all. I'll just have to enable the Widget Stalker for every icon box widget, and I'll make each of them 50% white. And in order to save some time, I'm gonna copy-paste style from the initial widget, because all of the widgets are supposed to be identical by design and properties, that's why. I'm sure that by now you recognize your own mistakes when it comes to the page building in Elementor. Well, maybe these shouldn't be called mistakes, maybe it's too harsh, because the fact that Elementor itself is not loaded with all required options yet is undeniable, right? Not much to be done here except the fact that I can use only one top column with 3 widgets instead of 3 columns and 3 widgets. So it looks like I'm going to save 2 columns here, which is also perfectly fine, no complaints. And I think I'm going to speed it up once again, because just like earlier, I'm going to merge that phone number and the tagline. After that, I'll use the Widget Stalker extension again to line up my widgets horizontally. That's all. If you wonder whether I was able to avoid using steroids for Elementor completely, the answer is more of yes than no. I could have used positioning properties, Elementor's positioning properties, which is perfectly fine for what I've been doing here, mostly. However, things are not always that simple. For example, I wouldn't be able to optimize the section number 5 on the way I just did by using Elementor's inline positioning. Anyhow, it's time for the final verdict. I'm going to save the page first and then preview in browser. As I already said at the beginning, my goal is to reduce the final size of the HTML somewhere between 15 and 20%. If you remember, the initial size with optimized UM output turned on was 68.98 kilobyte. Let's see what we got now. Alrighty, that's nice. We ended up with 53.67 kilobyte, which is very close to 20%. As a side note, you gotta be aware that our imaginary homepage has to be observed as a small-scale model that is also very simplified. But there are way more complex landing pages or home pages, and if you follow the guidelines from this tutorial, you could easily save a whole lot more. And it's not only about 10 or 100 kilobyte lighter final HTML. If you properly optimize all the images, if you use SVG instead of PNG wherever possible, you can easily end up with pages that load blazingly fast, and people are gonna love it. Even the almighty Google is going to appreciate it. Okay guys, I hope you learned something new, which is the whole point of this tutorial. You can download the training file via the link provided in the description if you like. There are 2 importable files in the package, one of which is unoptimized while the other one is optimized. Please visit my Gumroad shop, find something for yourself. This is how you can help me keep this channel alive. The link is in the description of this video. And in case you plan to buy the Elementor PRO license for yourself or on behalf of your clients, please use my Elementor affiliate link, because this is how I can earn some cash too. Stay well, stay safe, peace and love.